Testing, testing. That can't be it, can it? That's in.
It's the bottom one, right? It's the bottom one, right?
You think it's the bottom?
Thought so.
Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing.
Am I on? Can you hear me? Okay, good. This way, we're going to try to use the microphones. I have another one to pass around, so that people that are online will be able to track questions, answers, comments, things like that. But first, let's take a minute and pray, and then then I'll take a few minutes to describe and talk about, and then if you have any questions and comments and thoughts, and we can discuss at that point. First, to pray. God, we thank you for this evening and for this chance to sit down together and think about how we can be faithfully and fully yours. We ask you, God, to guide us in our thinking and in our speaking and in our pursuit of you, that we would find a way that gives honor to you and allows us to be faithful participants in your worship and in your study and in study of your word, and of inviting others to this important work that we do as well, where hope can be found. And so, God, as we strive to do that faithfully and well, guide us and direct us and help us to seek and find your will and the courage to do it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, well, I want to start with a quick explanation. I've sort of written some of this stuff down, so if you've been reading everything, that puts you in a very small minority, and this might be a little redundant, but that's okay. Just so that we're all on the same page, I want to sort of go over some of the thinking that got me here. And I feel that that's necessary because I want you to know that I understand how much chaos and angst this kind of conversation brings. I did not do this on a whim. I thought about this for a while and prayed about it before I decided to do it. But there were two problems that I could see that were difficult and structural to the way that we were operating in the past and the way that we were talking about going back to operating again. You know, we were about to, I came and there were a bunch of people here that wanted, and still do want, an earlier service, earlier than 11. So it used to be that we had 8, 9, 30, and 11. So the natural thing to do would be just start an 8 o'clock service, which I'm willing to do. But if we go back to 8, 9, 30, and 11, there are some structural problems that are inherent to that. One of them is we've been doing that for about 20 years. And the Sunday school is just not thriving. We talked about having 2 Sunday schools, one at 9:30 and one at 11, but that never really worked. We couldn't make it work. And it didn't seem to me that trying again was likely to be effective, you know, to do that again. So I thought, well, I want Sunday school to be available to everybody, including the people that are leading in worship and involved in the tech and things like that for the 9:30 service. Right now, with the Sunday school operating at 9:30 functionally, and none at any other time, you choose one or the other. You can't have both. And that's really a problem for me. I just think it's not very... The truth of the matter is that faithful Christian living requires worship and study, at least in my mind. Now, it's possible to study at times like Tuesday night, which we're about to start, and Wednesday morning for the women's Bible study. And that's going to catch a few percentage, 15 maybe % of the congregation, possibly. But there are families that I'd like to have the option to Sunday school and worship, not just a few individuals, seniors or adults. And so I wanted a space where worship and Sunday school wouldn't have to compete with each other on Sunday morning, so that people could be invited to be a part of both Sunday school and worship of their preferred format without competition, not having to choose one or the other. And the second thing is, I've had a lot of conversation with a bunch of people here, and I have seen it myself. When you have 8, 9, 30, and 11 o'clock services, it's very, very difficult to do anything together. When we tried to do my welcome thing, we didn't get the word out well enough, and we had some people show up at 11. And I'm sorry about that. We meant to get it out better, but it's hard to get the word out. People have to change their schedules and arrange that ahead of time, and it's very difficult to make that happen. And that's an indicator of what's I'm also getting concerns and complaints from people about, that it's hard to do things together, so we don't do things together. Other than a few events like the ham and oyster dinner, which is great, and I have no problem with that. This year, it looks like we're not going to be able to do it again. Sorry. Not my fault. I mean, I can't fix it. But, so we were only doing a few things together, and otherwise we didn't know each other, across different services. Because they're so spread out, it's just not possible. So I really want a way that most of us can do things together. A Sunday school hour that's unconstrained by other worship is an opportunity for people in different worshiping communities to do something together. And then if we were to have a time after where most of us could gather, we could do all kinds of fun things in that time together. Maybe have a missionary come and talk to us, or a special presentation about something, or a hymn sing, or a carol sing, or a whatever. Lunch. And if we do things together, then some of the separateness that keeps us apart could be diminished. Those are the two problems that I saw with the structure of an 8, 9:30, and 11. My initial idea was to just, have two 9:30s and have Sunday school at 11. That's, turns out, the reason I thought of that to start with is that I thought if the traditional services could be kept together so that we didn't have two different ones, then we'd have a bigger service and it'd be more energy and more together and less split apart. Nobody liked that answer. So, okay. So the current working best idea isn't mine, but it accomplishes most of what I was hoping for. And I think it's a big step forward from, at least in terms of those two problems that I mentioned, from 8, 9:30, and 11, which is what we've been doing. And so the current working plan, if you would, is an 8 o'clock service that'd be a restricted service. It would be a 45-minute service. We'd have to take some things out of this regular traditional service. But that would allow us to start Sunday school at 9, and then at 10:15, which is exactly halfway between the 9:30 and the 11, we could have the two services not together in the same room, but together at the same time. One here and one down there. Both of them at 10:15. And that would allow us to do things, Sunday school in between with everybody, and things after the 10:15 service with at least 2/3 of us in the same event without having to ask people to come back or get here early or whatever. And so it could be easy to do things together. Carol sings, hymn sings, dinners, whatever. Missionary presentations, stuff like that. Enrichment things that could allow us to be doing things together. So that's the current working best theory. Parents of kids basically said to me, 11 o'clock's too late for Sunday school. And a bunch of you guys said, 9:30's too early for worship. So, hopefully, a 9 o'clock Sunday school and a 10:15 worship is more palatable. But I really want to ask you that. That's what this is for. And maybe you have a better idea. I don't know. I want us to find a way that we can do more things together, less painfully, and that we can not put worship and Sunday school in competition with each other. That's the goals. That would allow things like Katie and I to be involved in teaching Sunday school, which I think is important and valuable. Because then we could be encouraging Sunday school to happen at an effective way and inviting people to be a part of it, and support, and we can be two of the teachers, and modeling worship and study on Sunday, which I think is a good idea. Not everybody may do it, but I think if we hold that up and model it and encourage it, there's a chance. If we put two things together at the same time, there's very little chance of that happening. So that's the logic of how we got here, and that's why I did this now. Instead of starting the 8 o'clock service and then having 8, 9:30, and 11, and having to I just thought we need to discuss this before we sort of lock ourselves into worship all Sunday morning with no time for Sunday school separate. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments. I don't want to, I did all of my talking just so you'd understand. I understand how difficult talking about changing worship times is. I get it. And I didn't do this casually. I did this because I thought it was necessary for us, for those two reasons in particular. Is this a golden BB that'll solve all problems? No. But if it makes it better, then I think it's worth it, or at least worth talking about.
Not sure I need this, but...
Well, people online won't hear you if you don't.
Yeah. Would the order of worship for the two simultaneous services be structured such that the same pastor could give the sermon at
No.
both of them?
No, that would be very complicated to try to manage. So what we would try to do instead would be to have, a pastor there and a pastor here, or a preacher at least, in both places. And pastors could be in both, whether or not we're preaching. But no, they would be different. They could be on the same theme, and that could be organized. But, for example, if it were Barry preaching downstairs and Katie preaching up here, I don't want to try the complexity of trying to have one sermon in two places like that at the same time. I love you guys, but I don't think that's reasonable.
I guess following up on that, though, that really makes it very difficult to have a sermon series, an ongoing sermon series with the same, when we've done six or so sermons in a row, kind of following the same theme and the same story, and to me that's very powerful. And if we're changing out ministers all the time, it doesn't seem like that would be very possible.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but Katie and I, for example, this summer had sort of a connected series of sermons around David and Nathan and Bathsheba and all that, and we were, a little bit back and forth between each other. In fact, we're also planning right now with the four preachers to have a sort of a 7-week series on the same material that we'll be doing in our Sunday school, well, not our Sunday school, in our Bible studies, Tuesday and Wednesday nights, that we're going to be, you get week 1, I get week 2, so we can do it. Obviously, when you do it with a team, it's not quite one person's vision, it's our vision. But I actually think that's actually, I think, better. It's at least as good. It's different, perhaps. But we could have a connected series of sermons that the team of preachers could work out together in a significant way. And that's what we're talking about doing right now, actually.
The other part of that is, if it was truly important for that to be a cohesive message, both services are at the same time.
Right.
We would do like we did 2 weeks ago and just join services at the same time and in the same
For
location.
something special. We could be together and have combined services. As long as we both fit here, my hope would be that we get to where that isn't practical. I also would love it if we got to the place where parking was a problem. Wouldn't that be terrible? I'm willing to park at Odenton and walk over. So. The point of this really is, I need to know your thoughts about this, and we will make a better decision than I ever could. I want to be clear that the discipline, our book of discipline, which is the rules for the Methodist Church, makes this Katie and my job. And since I'm the senior, I get the tie-breaking vote. So this is my job to decide this. No pastor who's been around the block more than once wants to make such a decision in opposition to the congregation's needs and desires. That's why I'm asking. I need your input. And I need your thoughts and suggestions and prayer and encouragement to do this job well. But I am concerned about those two things that I mentioned. And I'd like to work on it.
I just want to say, I don't need that. Okay, well, I just want to say that I'll be here whenever you all decide. It doesn't matter to me. But I know it matters to a lot of older people that have trouble getting here. I mean, by 11, I mean, that's hard for them. But to go even earlier, I think we might lose members. We might lose choir members, and I'm really worried about that. So that's my main concern.
Yeah, just as a choir member, yeah, coming at 9:45 seems a bit early for me. But, I don't know if there's any wiggle room to get that to 10:30 or something, but 10:15 seems just a weird time for worship.
The 10:15 is, it came because it's halfway between 9:30 and, but it also would allow, if we had a 15-minute Sunday school from 9, you'd have 25 minutes to sort of put yourself together for a 10:15 service, which means that the choir could warm up. They couldn't rehearse, they'd have to rehearse another time, but they could warm up, and Mary Carol could get in, to play the prelude and be settled before, the hour is upon us. We could go to 10:30. The more you go to 10:30 or later, the more you put the service at the end of the time, right at lunchtime, which is hard for families. Well, it's also halfway between.
Well, I just think it would be helpful just to have a show of hands, if it was moved to 10:15, do you think you'd show up? Just raise your hand. If
it were 10:15, would that be possible for you?
Yeah, would it be possible for you?
Okay, so it would not be for those of you that didn't raise your hands? Is that? Yeah. Right. Well, you do. The people online can't hear you.
You have no idea how long it takes somebody that's handicapped to get ready for church. And there isn't anything I can do about it. But I'm so glad that I'm back in church again. And I feel that this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us be glad and rejoice in it. And I feel that some of us like the convenience of getting out early because they've got a lot they want to do on Sunday. And there was a time when we didn't do anything on Sunday. I was allowed to ride a bike. I was allowed to go for a walk. And that was it. There wasn't anything open. And it's, that's my feeling.
I do think that we don't want to underestimate how long it takes to get ready. And I do understand that. Doug Whittle has made clear to me his feelings on this matter. And I'm not trying to discount any of that. I do want to say that the further after 9:30 you push it, the more you're pushing families the other direction. The nice thing about 10:15 is it's an exactly halfway between the two. You know, okay.
I understand what you were telling us at the beginning,
Uh-huh.
and I do want things to work out the best for the church and for people that we're trying to help bring to Christ. But we're in a position now where we knew we had to cut back on some things this year, and I never dreamed it would be the 11 o'clock service, because that's the only one we can do.
This isn't cutting back on the 11 o'clock service, but
Well, there won't be one if you, yeah.
it'd be moved to 10:15.
Well, we won't be able to do that. We can only do the 11. And I know you can't change everything just for us. I mean, but this will still be our church. We'll still support it financially and with our prayers, but we can't be here to worship at 11. I mean, if it's not here.
Oh.
And I'm a choir member too, and I thought maybe I wouldn't be able to do another year in choir, but I finally decided I want to do it because I want to.
Yeah.
But now I can't. So I don't know whether there are many other people in our position or not, but that's the way it is.
We also have several choir members that we kind of kidnap from the 9:30 service. They attend 9:30, but they sing with us, and we will lose them. The choir is really going to suffer from this.
Well, the 8 o'clock service is going to do that regardless, because some of the people that are in the choir are 8 o'clock people too.
And I'm talking about the original 11 o'clock choir that we usually have during the year, not the summer
Yeah.
choir.
Yeah.
Some of the youth, and also, there's the Shanks usually attend that service.
I got a couple questions.
Uh-huh.
First, the 8 o'clock condensed service that you're discussing,
Right.
is there a tremendous amount of interest in that? I'm sorry. Is there a tremendous amount of interest in that?
Well, let me put it this way. There are people who are not attending the 11 o'clock service,
Yes.
holding out for an 8.
Okay. That's fair.
And I don't know how many that is,
Yes.
but I know that it's non-trivial.
Okay.
So I think when I asked earlier about a 9:30 service,
Mm-hmm.
most of them were relatively enthusiastic, although some of them said they couldn't do that either. A small percentage said they couldn't do 9:30, that's still too late.
Okay.
If we go to 10:15, I don't think you can ask somebody who thinks that 9:30 is too late to go to 10:15. You'd have to have an earlier service option. It does divide us again, and I don't love that. At least the Sunday school hour could be together for those that can stay, or will stay, or both. but I just think that from the feedback I've been getting, some will still hold out
Okay.
from a 10:15 service. It's too far from 8. I mean, it's 2 hours later. Even 9:30 is too early for most of them, or some of them. Now, I've also said, some people that were 8 o'clock people have said to me, we don't mind sleeping in a little. So I suspect the 8 o'clock service will be relatively small compared to the hypothetical 10:15.
And the Sunday school, I know we've done a number of surveys
Uh-huh.
over that. Do you and Reverend Katie have a feeling that those Sunday school classes that you'll be able to do, there will be attendance on that if you get it out? Because I have attended Sunday school classes in the past, so I know that. But the
Uh-huh.
attendance were never really what I would call.
Well, I mean, if it's held up and modeled
Yeah.
and possible, available because of the schedule, then I think at the very least, we can say we might.
Fair enough, fair enough.
I
Yeah.
also want to say that, and I agree with you, there's a risk here.
Yeah.
But I also want to say that when I taught the high school Sunday school class here back in 1988, okay, it's been a while, we went from 11 to 35 in 16 months. Now, I'm not saying I can do that again. I'm not the same person, and it's a different time and a different group of people. But I think with the right encouragement and energy and some focused attention, there's a real potential that we could make Sunday school strong again. I think part of the reason Sunday school is suffering is because it's a different time. You know, and families are like the idea sometimes of just having their kids be in Sunday school and them in worship. The problem I have with that really is that we teach our kids that church is like school. You graduate from it and you're done, and they don't know about worship because they're not doing it. And we teach our adults that they don't need to know the Bible.
And I will end with this. I understand the situation you're in having to make this decision. But I have been on the thing where we've had the 8 o'clock service and 11 o'clock service, and then when we did have a function, we're all together. You know, it's like you're seeing people that you didn't even know they went to the same church
Right.
that you would have. So I understand that dilemma. I don't know what the answer is, if I would. But this is a difficult situation, and anybody that's went in any type of management that's went in and had to make these decisions, I understand that. So I will say, this is my personal thing. This is my church. I'm going to support it any way I can. So that decision is not going to prevent me from coming to this church and supporting it.
Well, I thank you for that. I appreciate that, actually. Make sure it's on. Yep, it's still on. Just point it at you and talk.
I'm an 11 o'clock person. I'm older now, and I need the extra rest. But I will support the church financially, as I always have. And I don't want to interfere with anything else that people need to do if they need to do it earlier. So I'm just saying I'm an 11 o'clock person.
When I was younger, I always thought there was just 3 groups, and an 8 o'clock, a 9:30, and then 11 o'clock. I never thought there was an entire congregation. So I'm thinking if we do the 10:15, everyone will feel more of a congregation and camaraderie of going to this church together. Not just 3 different groups of people.
What he said, do you want to say it again a little louder? Okay. What he said was that he always thought there were just 3 different churches, 8, 9:30, and 11, and he didn't know that they were together because we didn't do much together. And maybe if we did some things together, that would change the way this church feels.
As Doug said, I will support whatever is decided, whatever time. I prefer 11, and at 10:15 is fine with me too. I'll just have to get up a little earlier. My concern is that we're having the 9:30 and the 11 together, and then which allows us time to do things together. Well, having run pastoral care, I find it's very, very difficult to get a lot of volunteers to plan anything or do anything, especially from the 9:30. And I don't know if that's my fault for not being more visible at that service, or, it's just that it's a separate group, as he was saying. But I think if we're going to plan to do things together, we have to make that a really active option so that we feel like we are one family. And I don't feel that. Some people feel that way now. It's like he said, they feel like they're a separate entity.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem from my perspective, as the new guy. I mean, that's really broken.
So for a long time, I felt that the Sunday school, having 2 Sunday school hours, was problematic for volunteers, not just for having classes, but one of the things, and as a 9:30 person primarily, when I've come back to the 11 o'clock recently for personal reasons, I've run into people and they've said, "Oh, it's been forever since I've seen you," and it's been great. It's been a great reunion. It's been great to see people again. But I think that the volunteer question will be largely resolved by some of this effort if we decide to go in this direction as a church. And to lift up spiritual discipline and to lift up Christian education would be a super benefit for me as a 9:30 person and as an adult in this church. It would be very rewarding. And just having recently started to go to the 9:30 Sunday school and attend the 11 o'clock worship has been very rich for me.
Just one more thing. The way it's been now, occasionally, some people attend both services. So if we have them both at the same time, will we not be further apart because we can't attend the 9:30 occasionally, or go down and have coffee with them and then come back to the 11 o'clock? I mean, this would work if there were a lot of activities planned that would get us together, but who's planning all these activities? Will it happen?
If it doesn't, then we have shot ourselves in the foot. I mean, I agree with you. The thing is, you kind of have to pick your poison. We're too many people in too many different ways to do it, to all be in one place at the same time and have one service for everybody. So we either separate on time and allow someone, perhaps, to go from one to the other in terms of worship, or we separate in space, but then have the opportunity to do things before and after together. It's not a magic bullet, but if the cost of doing things like welcoming me and saying goodbye to Clark isn't that we have to rearrange our whole schedule, then the price of doing things is going to be a lot lower. And of course, the implication is that we are sort of obligated to have a missionary come and talk to us after the 2 services. Have a fellowship time and then come back and have a special presentation. Or have, I don't know, youth do something that we could all be a part of, as a presentation. Or have a carol sing at Christmas time. That doesn't take an awful lot of work if we don't have to all arrange our schedules. So that's, yes, you're right. If we don't do stuff together and we do this, then we're further apart than we were before. But the whole idea is to be able to do things together. Now, some people will have to leave. They got 1 hour for worship. The other 167 or something else. I can't fix that.
What's your preference?
My preference? Well, I think we've been trying the separated by time thing, and it's not working very well. So I think we should try something else. And I say that not because I'm the genius, but because if it ain't working, fix it. If it is working, don't break it. So to me, and I'm not saying that it will solve all problems. I think it'll present us with different problems. And maybe those are fixable. At least I hope, that we can make progress on those problems, since, frankly, for 20 years, we haven't been able to fix the structural problems of 8, 9, 30, and 11.
May I get in trouble here?
Yeah, you can, certainly. You got the mic.
All right, you guys are going to run me out on a rail. And I'm looking at all of you. We have, if you look out in this world, we are not doing our kids any favors. And by continuing to do the same thing with the same empty classrooms, we're contributing. We're not helping that thing at all. So I'm sorry for those of you that this is a little bit painful for. I'm sorry, Mary. I actually do understand because I have to get up extra early to change the dressings and so forth. And it's no picnic. It's no fun. But for me, as a younger guy, and I'm smiling. As a younger guy, you know, I've made my priorities and my commitments. I want to educate the youth. I didn't do a very good job educating Trey. Chaplin did much better with our previous classroom situation than Trey did, because Trey came in when we ended up with 3 services and 2 Sunday schools. That's a generation that we've lost. I don't know about anybody else, but that scares the daylights out of me. When I see what's going on out there, when I just watched a kid all dressed in black riding a scooter against traffic, weaving in and out, you know, I'll bet he'd be better served to be here on a Thursday night with Dan's kids. Our youth and young adults are getting it. If there's a time that doesn't work for them, they switch it. And they get as many people as possible at each one of their groups. You know, this is not going to be perfect. And we're going to have some growing pains. And I think I'd like to have the growing pains and some potential success rather than the complacency and being able to stick with my standard time of brunch or whatever it is. Some of us like to go to the Ravens games. I'll guarantee you, very few people know that Jan and I are cheered when we walk in a quarter and a half late for a Ravens game. Because the people around us know we're in church, and that's our commitment, that's our priority. And they'll joke and they'll say, yeah, but now we can get going. Now the Ravens can get going. We have to make some priorities. And I know a lot of us have grandchildren, and love our grandchildren. A lot of us have kids. But the bottom line is, are we willing to put them first and sacrifice a little bit more again? You know, we're talking about a 45-minute sacrifice. We're not talking about taking on a third job so you can get a kid going through college. We're teaching them life lessons. I think that's worthwhile. I haven't been able to go to a Sunday school in over 20 years. I'd rather miss that, and I'm anxious to get back to it. It probably means I'm going to be moving the Beacon Cafe to a Sunday, which means I'll still be teaching it, but that's okay. We have conversations. Again, smiling. But seriously, we really have to weigh, what are we supposed to be doing for our kids? We need to model for them so that they know that it's important to have Bible study time. Several of you heard me a couple of weeks ago when I was talking, when I was giving a message up here. Cooper and Colton had spent the night. And the next morning they were up reading. No, I was reading. They were watching TV. And Cooper started to say something, and Colton's response was, "Don't interrupt him. He's reading the Bible." They didn't know I was reading the Bible. I was reading from my phone. But they know. I think we just need to put them first.
Forgive me if I missed this earlier. My hearing's not very good. Is any thought being given to doing this in a phased approach, like do it once a month for a while, then maybe twice a month, so we can kind of get used to the new rhythm, see how it works before we make an abrupt transition?
There's very little. I mean, we've thought about that quite a bit, actually, and talked about it. Certainly I have, because that was suggested earlier in one of the surveys, I think. The problem is either a different pattern allows different habits or it doesn't. And if we scooge into it, there's no way to get patterns built, habits. There's no way to see if it works because it's a once in a while thing. One of the things we did talk about is if we don't do something like this, we could have maybe every 5th Sunday be a combined Sunday, that's 4 times a year. It's at least a pattern, although we'll leave people behind if we do that, because somebody will forget that it's the 5th Sunday, of course, and that's just the way these things go. Yeah, and like Daylight say, exactly. So, habits are hard to form and try, and I think easing into it never allows us to even have the chance to build a habit that we might compare to what our habit is now. So I would like to think that there would be a way, but I can't think of a way to make that happen gracefully.
Maybe I'm just thinking about me and being selfish. Sunday mornings, I like to study and might be by myself. I concentrate more and remember more, and then come to 11 o'clock and hear you preach.
Well,
I'd like to, I guess, re-emphasize that we want what's best for the church, the whole body, the children, the adults. And we have great grandchildren. We care a lot about children. And we older people all have different reasons why we need to be here at 11 instead of earlier. And most of them are medical. And I just want everybody to know that we care. So whatever you work out, it's best for the church. And as I said, bringing people to Christ, that's how it's got to be.
If I may, this is something very personal, and I'm hesitant to share it, but the last 18 months for me have been a walk through hell. And part of that was a person closer to me than anyone in this world decided to convert to Islam, partially because of the lack of Christian education. That is not a silver bullet. It is not to say it wouldn't have happened anyway. It is a hard reality, but it is my reality.
Yeah, growing up, I was actually in the Primitive Methodist Church. Not that it's much different than other Methodist churches, but we always had Sunday school and worship, and the children ended up in worship, like you were talking about. And it hasn't been that way for a while because there's a lot of choices and dilution, I think, of the staff for teaching Sunday school. So I do like the idea of having a re-emphasis on Christian education on Sunday morning. I was wondering about the times. We slipped, there was a change to 10:15 for the proposal, which is an odd time. And also it compresses the warm-up time for both the choir and the praise band. So they might be bailing on whatever Christian education we set up. So I was wondering about 9 o'clock for the Sunday school. I'm not sure how long that's going to run, whether it's 9:50 or 10 o'clock. But then have a built-in social time between and do the services at 10:30. And that would give the choir and the praise band time to set up, warm up. I know that adding time in there increases the possibility of people leaving, perhaps. But if it's a compelling social time, then that could be a built-in time, together time for people showing up early or staying through.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I agree with you that that's a possibility and that's something we might live into. If we find that we're frantic between, then maybe we need to do that. But I think we need to recognize that kids have a clock. For how long they're going to, we stopped going to eat out at restaurants for a while because we couldn't get our kids to sort of settle for long enough to be civil, at a restaurant where if the cook isn't right on the ball and it took 20 minutes between ordering the food and getting it. Now, if our break has donuts, which it will, I mean, then there's a chance that the kids are going to sort of, traverse it gracefully and then be still functional for worship after. But the more you stretch that, the harder it gets for kids to move from Sunday school through a fellowship time with a donut to worship gracefully. I think we need to recognize that the further we push it back, the less functional it is for families. I mean, and that's a large part of what this is all about,
I have a question. If I was trying to think of other schedules, like what if we bumped everything a little later? Like we had a service 8:30 to 9. We had like Sunday school 9:10 to 10, and then a 10:30 service, or 9:15 to 10:15 Sunday school and a 10:30 service. For those of you for whom 10:15 is just too early, would 10:30 be more realistic, or do you think that's just too early as well?
The reality is that the time shaved on one side is time paid by the other. Left hand, right hand here. I don't love 10:15 as a time. I think it's a weird time. On the other hand, as a practical matter, we build a habit. If we're coming here for a 10:15 service, say, or a 10:30 service, doesn't matter, we set the alarm clock 15 minutes different, and we get here, or we don't. If we're going to come to Sunday school, right now, they're trying to be here at 9:30 for Sunday school. We're asking them to come at 9. For some kids, well, not kids, for the parents, that's not a trivial ask. So, the point is, whatever time we pick, we're building habits to the time. And that's why we can't really ease into it or scoot toward it. It's got to be a habit that we find that works or doesn't.
And I've seen many of the megachurches go with like 9:32. Celebrate the difference rather than call it, just an inconvenient truth.
9:32, yeah, that's not enough. I don't think my brain can handle it. Hey, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, at some level, we either build new habits that we find functional or we don't. If we don't, then we got to break this back. One of the things that's certainly true is if we try something that at least doesn't, on the surface, appear to have the same problems that we have now, it may not fix them. Well, and if it doesn't, then the payoff is too small and we go back. Or we try something else. And I'm not saying this is a take it or leave it deal. I really am not. I really am trying to find a solution. But we know the system we have now has these problems, the ones that we've been living with for 20 years. It's just possible that if we changed it somehow, some of those problems might mitigate. Maybe we generate new ones, and then we figure out how to solve them one way or another.
So I think just with the way this is going to happen is there's going to be some problems, and if this 10-15 thing doesn't work out at first, you don't succeed, try again. There are problems and we have to fix them, so we have to find a way.
That's when I was asked, which one do I prefer? I prefer that we try something. that might have different problems, at least. We've been living with these problems for 20 years.
I think this kind of ties to what was brought up earlier in terms of getting volunteers. The last thing we need to do is make a change that's going to cause us to lose our existing volunteers, because we've had a heck of a time getting any new ones for a long time. And that means that a lot of the volunteers are the older people in the church. I mean, a lot of times when Bill and I show up to things, we are like several decades younger than everybody else. And so, I mean, I think we need to be very, very careful and make sure that the existing volunteers are going to be able to handle this. And I don't know what the answer to that is. I haven't, polled all of them, but we do have to be very careful of that, because we have had historically, and that there are probably many reasons for it, but we've had a hard time getting volunteers out of the 9:30 service.
I left my pocket watch over here. Oh. I want us to make sure not to exceed 8 o'clock so that we respect the hour. We have 7 minutes. Is there something that we haven't considered that we need to? I will say this. The worship committee is meeting next week to discuss this input and other, the other sessions as well, and other feedback we've gotten and other ideas we've come up with and other questions and concerns that have been raised. So this is not it's not speak now or forever hold your peace. but we're working toward the goal of the worship committee, as we discussed in our first meeting, was to try to have some sort of decision, if possible, by the beginning of October, so that we could implement before we get to Christmas. I don't know how that's going to work. We're working all that out. But I don't want to be making a change the first week of Advent. Let's not do that. Okay? So I say that to you because I want you to understand the constraints under which we're trying to operate for effectiveness.
I think Mary Carol needs are important to the congregation. What would we do without her? And so we would hope to try to have something that kind of accommodates her also. Because your music is an important part of church.
I'd just like to ask a favor of you. Would you quote the Bible verse about where everything there is a time and a... Because I'm thinking of that for our lives.
Right. Anybody happen to have that? Ecclesiastes 5, maybe? I'm not sure. Can you take a quick look? Thank you, Barry. He's going to try to find it. I could misquote it, but that's not one of the ones I actually memorized as a teen. I mean, I know generally what it says, but I would abuse it. Ecclesiastes 3? 3. Oh, somebody's better at calling chapter and verse than I am. That's not hard. When I was a teen, I went to some Awanas meetings where we did sword drills. Maybe you'll know what that is, and maybe you won't. But, call out chapter and verse and find it, and stand up when you get it. The first one gets to read it. But not as many as I should have. You have it?
Same Bible Colton saw me reading. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away. Let me keep on. A time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace.
Thank you. An excellent suggestion. So thank you for that. Somebody?
I was just thinking about how much I really enjoyed the welcome service for you, and having the combined service for that in particular, I thought was really fun to enjoy some of the different types of music. And if we did that periodically, it might be something to encourage people to do special music and come for the 9:30 service to do prepare for certain songs in advance. We might get some additional members that way who might not do it otherwise because they don't want to be part of the praise band or uncomfortable or whatever, but it'd be an open invitation then to help encourage that along once in a while.
Yeah, one of the questions that was asked that I think is worth reflecting on and thinking about how it might look is, how would a cantata happen? And I think the answer is, as long as we can, we could do a combined service, here, as long as that works. And we could do it at 8 o'clock too, if that was, if we all fit in one space at one time. I mean, if we have enough voice for that. Depends on the cantatas chosen, really. I guess there's just one last thing that I really wanted to think about, and I really liked your question about the volunteers. It's an important question. I think that efficiently deploying Katie and I into Sunday school would help the Sunday school. And I think if we can, this is an if, not a for sure, but if we can develop a bit of a culture of people going to Sunday school and worship, we might be teaching people that it's not an hour a week, and the service to God is longer and more than that. And I think that would help quite a bit, could at least.
I'm going to say this realizing it's exactly the opposite of what I said before, but your point about making it about it being difficult for kids, teens, some adults to be here for 2.5 hours and wanting to hit the mark the first time out, if we could resolve the issue with rehearsing the choir either on a different day so that we're already ready to go, then 9 to 10, if it's only 45 minutes, 9 to 10 and 10 to 11 makes the whole period 2 hours, keeps the times even, and the sell is you're here for 2 hours. For Sunday school, which I know we've experimented with different names before, school, but Bible study, something. That's like the least of the worries right now, the times. But having a 2-hour selling point might be easier from 9 to 11 than having a 10:15 start on a service.
Yeah, I don't suspect that many are going to love the idea of going to 10 from 11, though. And 2 hours is probably easier to sell than 2 hours and a half. You know, I don't know. Part of my hope would be that having some time in between, even if it's just 25 minutes, would allow Katie and I to do things like welcome people coming in for the service and some fellowship between, so that you're not running from Sunday school to worship. We could pack things up pretty tight. If we do that, then we don't have any opportunity to sort of welcome and greet and chat, eat a donut. What's the right answer? I don't know. But that's the kind of tension we're talking about, exactly like that. I would like for us to be able to not sprint from Sunday school to worship. I'd like for us to have a time when we could have Katie and I greeting people at the door, you know, and teaching Sunday school. And, well, I think we've got enough. I really do appreciate your energy, passion, reflection, wrestling. These are not easy questions, and they matter. And I appreciate your passion and energy and enthusiasm and courage to come and share your thoughts. Thank you. I really am listening. And at the end of the day, we're going to do what we can that we think will make have the best chance of working, of really making this a healthy and vital church. It is already in a significant way, but even better. And that's the goal. Yeah.
Now that you've had all three meetings, how will you decide and how will you notify?
It's a committee meeting.
Okay.
The worship committee that has only just been forming will meet again to discuss the input. And we'll one of the things that you should look for in this newsletter, so probably on Friday, is some sort of summary report. It's not going to be data, numbers, but it's going to be suggestions and concerns and questions and, you know, things to think about. And I'll try to capture as much as I can in what passes for me as brevity. That's a and we'll have something that we'll then chew on, and we'll also share the link to this video recording if it worked out, which I hope, knock on wood, it did, and then we can let people that weren't here see us wrestle and think and pray and strive together. And then the worship committee will meet and we'll discuss, see where wisdom takes us. So, and prayer and discernment. Let's pray now, and you can stay. I'm not throwing you out, but we'll officially call our meeting closed after the prayer. God, we just thank you so much for people to think together about how to be faithful with. We thank you for the history of faithfulness that is Nichols-Bethel, for all the lives that have been touched and changed, and all the good that's been done, and all the hope that's been shared, for the light in the darkness that this place has been and continues to be. And yet, God, like all those who've gone before us, we find ourselves wrestling with how to be faithful with the energy and passion and calling you give. And so, God, we ask you to help us. Help us discover your will and the courage to do it. And we'll strive continuously to be faithful. May we, God, who have wrestled earnestly with this question and so many like it before and to come, be blessed and graced to hear your words when we're all done the race. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in little. Now, be in charge of much. Enter into the joy of your master. And we, God, will continue to give you the praise and the glory as we seek to find the right time to do some of the hard things that are necessary to bring your kingdom more fully and faithfully into our lives, our neighborhood, and our children's lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.